and do some introductions. Hi again, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you might be located. My name is Javon Edwards, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm the Associate Director of School Services at UC Santa Barbara. And you are joining our counselor webinar series. This session is specifically pertaining to the UC application and the activities and awards section of the UC application, and how your students can express involvement, but really more so effectively express their involvement in the activities and awards section of the UC application. Now, you're going to be with me for about 30 to 40 minutes today, and we will have some time for Q&A. If you do have any questions, as again, a reminder, this is a webinar, so you're more than welcome to ask any questions in the Q&A box that you see at the very bottom of your screen, as I will take a look at the questions at the end of the session today. Now, this session is recorded, so once again, you will be able to take a look at the slides and the content and information later down the line as a refresher, as it will be posted on our YouTube channel, UCSB For Me. Now, you are taking a look at our agenda for today, so we are going to do a refresher of sorts for holistic admissions and all of the considerations that we do look at and reviewing a student's UC application. We're going to talk about the basics of the activities and awards section, and then we are going to dive into best ways students can craft their involvement in the activities and awards sections. And we're going to also take a look at some different scenarios as well. We're going to dive into all of the different involvement categories, showcasing some screenshots of the UC application just to refamiliarize yourselves with the different types of categories that are available for first-year freshman students. And then we'll dive into some activity and awards samples, taking a look at whether this activity or award sample was a missed opportunity, seen as neutral, or was adding value to the student's overall application. And then lastly, we will go ahead and dive into some counselor and applicant resources. Now, holistic admissions. For all UC campuses, we are using a holistic or comprehensive review approach when taking a look at your students' applications. And to summarize the 13 factors that we're going to go over in just a second, we are looking overall at the students' achievements in light of their available opportunities. Did they take advantage of the opportunities that were available to them? If they did not take advantage of those opportunities, they have to be explicit and provide us with information that tells us the why or why not. And that's going to be seen throughout the UC application and the additional comments section and the personal insight questions. We need to know what was available to the student. Did they take advantage of it? And if they did not, the reasons behind the why not. So there are on the screen are 13 factors for admissions. And you can take a look at the QR code that is at the top right corner of your screen. That will take you to our UC Office of the President's admissions website that will detail the 13 factors for admission consideration. And you're seeing those 13 factors now as well. So all UC campuses do use a completely independent review process. So I am not going to give UC San Diego or UC Irvine a call to figure out if they're going to be admitting a student, if they're going to be denying a student. I'm only concerned at UC Santa Barbara about my UC Santa Barbara applicants and reviewing all of the applications, which every single year is roughly 110,000 freshman applications alone. I'm only concerned about reviewing those particular applications. Now, at UC Santa Barbara, we utilize all 13 factors when reviewing a student's application, and each UC campus can prioritize other factors that are listed on the screen. All of these factors have been vetted and faculty approved by each UC campus, and these are the only 13 considerations that we can utilize. Now, you're not going to see on the screen anything pertaining to race or ethnicity or religious beliefs or values listed on here as preferences of what we can consider for admission consideration. But you are going to be taking a look at the academics side, right? We're talking about the quantitative data. We're talking about GPA. We're talking about the number and content and the performance of those A through G courses that students complete, and are they exceeding those minimum requirements? We're looking at the rigor of the courses that's available to the students, what's available to them at their given high school. We're going to be taking into consideration those AP courses, those IB courses, those UC approved courses, or any rigorous courses available at that student's high school. And if they decided to take advantage of a dual enrollment program because their high school offered it, or they decided to just enroll at a community college and take some courses, we will take that into consideration. We're also going to be looking at the quality of the student's senior year as well. If a student is going to be a California applicant and designated as a California applicant, we're taking into consideration eligibility under the local context. We are taking a look at a lot of quantitative academic factors, but on the right-hand side, especially as you take a look at bullets number 10, number 11, number 12, and 13, we're also taking into consideration non-academic involvement as well. So we're looking at students' special talents, their skill sets that they have, what awards or honors did they receive? Have they shown significant promise for leadership? Have they had experiences that ultimately could contribute to the intellectual vitality of a UC campus when they decide to come to UC? We're also looking at, as again, emphasizing those academic accomplishments in light of a student's experiences. Are they a first generation student? Are they coming from a family with that is disadvantaged, coming from a low income family? Are they having the need to work part-time, even full-time over the summer? Are they having difficult personal or family situations? All of that context will come into play in the entire UC application. But as we continue the conversation today, it's going to be more so pertaining about the academic history. And so we're going to, excuse me, not academic history, activities and awards. There we go. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the activities and awards section. And within this section, we are really emphasizing and trying to figure out what were the students' involvements inside and outside of the classroom. We will have an understanding of their academics. We will have an understanding of the grades they receive, all of that quantitative data. We now want to look at the qualitative data, their experiences, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom, how they spent their time. Now, these are various different types of involvement that students can absolutely decide to report in the UC application. And we really want students to think broadly about how they spent their time in high school, focusing on ninth through 12th grade. And we are looking at everything from experiences that pertain to their academic enrichment. So were these particular summer programs that they were involved, research based or not research based? Maybe this was volleyball camp. Maybe this was a summer research program that they did at a University of California. Did they have any type of tutoring experiences? Were they the tutor? Were they a peer mentor? Were they involved in any particular competition, sport related or non-sport related, mainly pertaining to, again, their academics for this particular bullet? Are they involved in any work experiences? Did they have any internships? Did they have any part-time jobs? These part-time jobs could have been 5 hours out of the entire week for 3 to 4 months, but that's something that they absolutely should still report. Did they have any non-traditional involvements? Thinking outside of the box here, especially as it pertains to family responsibilities. Many times students that you all are working with, that we are seeing coming in as applicants, they are not able to get as involved as they would have liked to in high school because of other responsibilities that they had as a student. They're balancing their student life. They're also balancing their personal life. That personal life component does include family responsibilities like taking care of siblings. They're taking care of their grandparents, right? They have to cook dinner for their siblings before their parents come home from a late night shift. So these are things that we want to know in the application because it's providing us with context about maybe other opportunities that they weren't able to get involved in because they had specific familial responsibilities. Were they involved in any particular community service endeavors, whether this was volunteering? Were they involved in any advocacy efforts? Were they an activist themselves? Were they involved in any, religious or values-based involvements? That could be serving at a church over the weekends on Sundays. This could also be any creative or independent pursuits that they have. Are they interested in art? Do they on the weekends sell their artwork at the market? Are they involved in music? How long have they been involved in music? Piano lessons since sixth grade can absolutely be reported, but we want to have them emphasize ninth through 12th grade as well. Are they involved in any coding efforts, any gaming efforts as well? We'll talk about that in a second. And have they self-started any particular projects? So really thinking broadly here on the types of involvement students have been in during their high school years, it should be shared in the UC application. Realistically, we want to know about it all and what took up their time during their high school years. So let's go ahead, excuse me, and dive into some basics. So now we talked about thinking broadly in the different types of involvement, but these are going to be the specific categories that are available for students when they're applying in the UC application as first year freshmen. Now, there are going to be 6 different categories in total, everything from awards and honors that students receive, educational preparation programs, extracurricular activities, coursework other than those A through G requirement courses, volunteer community service, and work experience. I'm going to break down all of these 6 categories in just a little bit so that you can see some examples and also see what questions are asked in the UC application. So hold tight on that. But a few reminders as students are reporting their UC application activities and awards. We will leave space for up to 20 activities and awards to be reported. This is dissimilar to the common application, right? We're asking for more here. But while we leave space for 20 involvements to be reported, we are not looking for the quantity of those involvements. We are not looking for those spaces to just be filled with, little to none meaningful experiences. We're looking for quality. We're looking for quality of those experiences. We want these experiences to be meaningful. We want them to be impactful to the student, and we want them to be authentic. And so as your students are reporting their experiences, let's avoid for them just to put something there, just to put something there. We are really looking at the quality of their involvements. As students are inputting their experiences, they can input the most important one at the very first line or number 1, or they can list it as the number 20. Bottom line, the UC application readers are reading the entirety of their application and they're reading all of their involvements, number 1 through 20, if they have 20 to report. But the list in itself is not ranked. So students do not have to worry about putting, their most meaningful or most important experiences at the top. They can, but it's not going to be a ranking. Now, all experiences that students have, whether this was an award that they received, whether this was a sport that they were involved in, whether this was a family responsibility that they had a commitment to, we are going to see all of those involvements as equal. And we're going to talk about, yes, all involvements being equal, but realistically, it's about the way students frame those involvements, how they craft their descriptions of those involvements that really add to the meaning, add to the impact of what they've achieved, what they've done with their time. And so it doesn't matter if a student was involved in research versus a student that was taking care of their siblings. I, as application reader, are going to hold those involvements on an equal footing, but I'm really looking for what students are telling me about what they did with those particular experiences. And then, as mentioned before, I am going to encourage students to absolutely add those non-traditional involvements. Again, thinking outside of the box here is really key. If it was meaningful to them, if it had an impact to themselves or others, if they grew over time in that particular involvement, they should be sharing it. Now, within this section, there is going to be an area that's going to ask, how much time did the student dedicate to a particular experience? And you can see the screenshot of the UC application asking specifically, hey, what grade levels did you participate in this particular activity that you're reporting? Was it just ninth grade? Was it 10th grade? Was it ninth through 12th grade? So students need to report every single grade level that they did complete that particular experience. And as you're working with your current seniors right now, they need to make sure that if they're going to plan to do something, that they're reporting it in their 12th grade year. So we really want them to include anything that they plan to do in the spring and what they're currently doing right now in the fall of their senior year. Now, the after 12th grade section is not going to be for students that are applying as first year freshman students. It's typically for students that are thinking about doing or applying that have completed a gap year, or for students that are transfer students. So most typically your students are going to leave that after 12th grade section blank. And then we're going to ask them to do a little bit of math here so that we can get an understanding of the average amount of time that they spent in that activity. And so we are looking for them to average out the amount of hours that they spent in that involvement per week, and also average out the amount of weeks that they spent in that involvement per year. So out of 52 weeks in a year, how many weeks did they spend? If it was over the summer and it was the months of June and July, that's 8 weeks. And then of those 8 weeks, how many hours on average did they spend per week? And so this is going to be a way in which we can really quantify the time commitment of a particular involvement. So this is a way we can understand how long was a student dedicated to a given experience. Now, as students are inputting their involvements and inputting their time commitment, they're also going to be asked to clearly, ideally, compellingly as well, state and express their involvement of what they've done. And so this, session in itself, I'm hoping will give a little bit of insight into what we are looking for and how your students can really craft those compelling descriptions of what they've done during their high school years. So let's talk about the descriptions and how students can describe their accomplishments. Now, giving a little bit of basics for this section, there is 350 characters that students can utilize to describe their roles in a given activity or their responsibilities. Did they showcase initiative? Did that particular activity or involvement have an impact to themselves or others? Were they able to showcase from that involvement persistence, right? They were continuous in their endeavors in that particular involvement. They were dedicated to it. They obviously were committed to it based on the time in which they spent in that involvement. Were they creative in their pursuits? And did they give back to others? So these are a few of the characteristics. These are a few of the things that we're looking for out of their involvements. And within this section, excuse me, my voice is starting to go out. Within this section, 350 characters is realistically maybe 2 to 3 sentences. So it's not a lot of space to tell us what they did with their time. And so we do not require full sentences. We just need to have a clear understanding of what they accomplished, what they did, how they demonstrated leadership and dedication or creativity, right? It is going to be very important for students to be specific about what they did, not detailing what the program was all about, not giving us a description of what the sport and how to play the sport is all about, which we've seen. We really want them to focus on what they've done with their time and the impact, the outcome of it all. So when students are reporting certain experiences, it's always nice that they share a little bit of data, that they quantify some of their experiences and also explain how this experience was significant to them, ergo the outcome of it all. So let's take a look here about what formula potentially could be used as students are thinking about crafting their involvement through these descriptions. So we are wanting them to include some active verbs, right? What did they do? They organized, they led, they created, they mentored, they supported, dot, dot, dot. And as they're including these active verbs, they are also now needing to quantify these experiences by adding very specific details. These specifics could be indeed data, so numbers. I was, awarded the dean's list out of 20 other students that also received the award out of a class of 500, right? I now have some contextualization to how that achievement it is definitely meaningful to them, but also competitive achievement because it was a class of 500. Their roles in itself, what was their roles, what was their responsibilities, what were the goals and or the outcome? And then also them mentioning the impact. What was the impact for themselves? I think impact and them showcasing leadership and growth can be one and the same. And so maybe that impact meant that they were able to build upon different leadership skills, that they were able to grow as an individual, right, over time. And so we are looking at the action, the specifics, the outcome, and the leadership slash growth. And so here's an example of ways in which a student can craft their experience to showcase all of these formulas or points of formula in their experience. So example, led a 6-person team to organize blood drive. So led is that active verb. They're now giving me specifics. I know that it's not just a team. I know that it was a 6-person team that they were leading. They were organizing blood drives. Okay, right, perfect. So they led a 6 team to organize blood drives. They collected, again, an active verb, over 200 pints, giving me specifics here, and increased student participation by 40%. Now I'm seeing the impact. This impact was on others and the community. So they increased participation in people that were providing blood to this donation. And then they also strengthened, thinking about their own skills that they've gained, they strengthened their communication and team management skills over a 9-month period. So you can see where they've added action verbs, they've added specific details, right? We're talking about, quantifiers, 6-person, 9 months, 200 pints. They tell me what the outcome was of them doing this particular experience. And then they've now shown how they've grown over time. Okay, so now that we have an idea of the formula, if you will, I have a scenario for you all, and I'm gonna go ahead and see if the chat is open, which it's not. So I'm gonna go ahead and open it now. And so this scenario is you have a student with minimal involvement in high school. They've been involved with some high school clubs, and they have a few hobbies. One of their hobbies is knitting. Should they include this involvement in the UC application? What say you? Feel free to add it into the chat if you think this is an experience that they should include in the UC application. All right. And while I'm waiting for folks to add into the chat, I'm taking a look at the Q&A just as a reminder. Yes, this session is recorded. It will not be sent out after the workshop, but it will be posted on our YouTube channel. You can check out for that by the end of the week. It'll be there. All right. So I'm seeing a lot of yeses in the chat, especially if they've knitted blankets for babies in the NICU. Oh, yes, yes, yes. They can talk about creativity, the focus, how they learned. Yes, I would include yes, yes, yes. Okay. I think that we were all on the same page. And interestingly, I had this conversation with a few of the other UC counselors and directors on this conversation. And it really is a it depends kind of answer, right? What exactly is this student doing with knitting? Was this a one-time try where they dipped and dabbed in knitting? Were they maybe sharing their skill set with others to teach them how to knit? Maybe going to an elderly home to teach other folks how to knit? So it depends. And it's really about how students are framing their experiences and ensuring that they're framing it effectively. So let's have this conversation about knitting, right? As this example, what was the commitment? How long did they do it? Was it a 1 day, a 1 week experience? Was it actually meaningful to them? How often did they do it? Was it something that they felt that they could showcase their creativity? Maybe they were designing certain projects, and with those projects, they were selling, right? And then taking that money to give back to the community. Were they deciding to showcase initiative and decided to learn how to knit and sew on their own? Were they, again, as I mentioned, teaching others how to do it? What was the community impact? Again, I talked about, are they selling it? Are they donating it? Somebody mentioned in the chat, are they giving it to their knitting and creations to NICU babies, right? And patients. Were they leading a knitting club at their high school? I don't know. Did they have any growth or were they able to reflect on that particular experience? Were there skills that were developed? Did they learn how to become more patient? Maybe they have a lot of anxiety, and knitting is a way to mitigate some of that anxiety, right? So it's about how they frame it. Now, here's an example of maybe how a student could frame this knitting experience, right? They're not just stating that they knit and they really enjoyed it and they had a lot of fun. No, they're saying, hey, I practice. Well, there's that action verb, practice knitting weekly to design scarves and hats for friends and family. Okay, there's the community impact. They developed patience, attention to detail, creative problem solving. There's that growth and reflection played out. And they said they did all this while mastering new patterns and techniques. So they frame this in a great way that tells me that yes, there was some impact there. There was some creativity. They grew from it. They learned, they developed over time from this experience. Another example is they led school knitting group to create and donate blankets to local shelters. They organized supply drives. They taught peers basic techniques. They combined creativity with community service. They're explicitly telling me that they did community service with this. They were teaching their peers. And so it is about, again, how students are framing their experiences and that they are using some of these keywords to help the application reader know, like, oh, yeah, you were giving back to the community. Oh, yes, you did showcase leadership because you were leading a school group knitting club. You gave back to local shelters. So you all are indeed correct that yes, this was something I would share. And you're more than welcome to add into the chat for this scenario as well, but for the sake of time, and I think we all get the gist of it, here's another scenario, right? What about a student who has a hobby of playing video games? Should they include this involvement in the UC application? Well, as we just learned, it's about how it's framed, right? If you have students that have these type of experiences where you're like, okay, so what are you trying to say with this? What do you want the application reader to know about you with this particular experience? Have them ask some of these questions here on the screen. Now, this example is specific to gaming, but it definitely could be applied to some of those non-traditional experiences. So this student would need to ask themselves, did they create, organize, lead, or contribute to something through gaming? So what did they do with all of their gaming experiences, right? Was it just something that they dipped and dabbed in. They were just trying to entertain themselves, or were they intentional about their gaming experiences? Did it teach them certain skills or discipline? Did it connect them with a particular gaming community, or did they have a project from it other than casual play? And so these type of experiences can be crafted in a way where it's demonstrating initiative and growth, but we want to steer away from students reporting anything that doesn't demonstrate that. If a student just said, hey, I'm playing video games for fun after school, well, that does nothing for their entire application review. That tells me nothing about them. That tells me nothing about how they, potentially impacted others or how they grew themselves over time. And so here's examples of a way in which a student could craft a gaming experience that this student is saying, hey, I created and coded original games using Unity. They designed gameplay mechanics and tested prototypes. They streamed gameplay tutorials and managed online audience. They developed communication and media production skills. Wonderful. Okay, that tells me a lot right there. Gaming example number two, the student developed problem solving and focus through strategic gaming, balanced screen time with academics and athletics. So they were able to learn and grow and understand how to balance what they're interested in addition to hopefully what I'm seeing on the application review front. Their academic history shows A's and B's. So yeah, they were able to have this enjoyable experience, this problem solving experience through gameplay, but also be an excellent student. So it is, again, how these involvements are framed, and how students can use these keywords, right? These action words, providing us with specifics, telling us how they learned and grew over time. So let's break down the involvement categories, and I'm going to go really briefly over this because I feel like you will probably have an understanding, but just in case, these are going to be the different categories and the questions that are asked in the UC application. So the first category is award or honor. And so we are going to ask the student, what was the name of that award or honor? We're going to ask for the level of recognition. This provides us with a little bit of context about likely the competitiveness of this particular award or honor, but students should provide us with more contextual details, thinking about those specifics, right? Quantifying the details. So was this level of recognition specifically at the school? That's a drop-down selection. Was it a city or community achievement? Was it a state, regional, national, or international achievement? And then the type of award we're going to ask, was it an academic award versus a non-academic award? And then same conversation with every single category. We're going to ask the time commitment. So that means what were the grades in which the student received this particular award? Maybe they received it twice and they received it in ninth and 10th grade. So they'll be able to detail that as well. And then this is the only category in which we're asking for a little bit more detail about the eligibility requirements for that particular award. So they need to tell us specifically how recipients were chosen, how many people were selected. We are telling them out the gate that we do need a little bit of data so that we have a little bit more context about this particular achievement. And then we're also going to be asking them, what did they accomplish to achieve that particular award? Excuse me. The next one is going to be educational preparation program. And so this is going to be any program that has enriched a student's academic experiences and helped them prepare for college. On the drop-down selection, you're going to see a lot of UC educational preparation programs. Just know that while this list is available and there, and students should absolutely select it if they were in MESA, if they were in educational talent search, there is going to be a selection option that is other, and the student would need to input that program name. We're going to ask them to describe a little bit about the program. And so this is where they don't need to go in depth about what they did. We'll ask for that later, but we're going to ask them to describe what is this program all about. And then again, that time commitment of grades participated and time spent in the particular program. The next section is going to be extracurricular activities. And so this one, we are going to be asking any particular involvement that they had. This could be where the student is inputting knitting. This could be where the student is inputting gaming, right? It's a hobby, it's a club, it's a sport, it's anything else that does not fall into any of the other 5 categories. So we're going to ask what the name of that particular activity is. We're going to ask them to describe in that 350 characters using, again, the action words, using the specifics, the outcome, the impact, and the leadership or growth that they've experienced from that particular extracurricular activity, and then the time that they spent in that activity as well, grades participated. Now, other coursework is always a question from students of, what exactly are you asking for from this? It should be anything that is not A through G, but it should not be physical education. Physical education is not A through G. We also don't want to know about it in the other coursework section, as well as TA courses, all right, teaching assistant courses. So we are going to be looking for any other courses that are outside of those parameters that are also outside of the A through G consideration. So religious courses are not A through G. That's where this can be reported. If a student completed any ROP or vocational courses that are outside of a school's A through G curriculum, they can be reported here. Any non-transferable college level coursework should be reported here. Non-transferable college level coursework is traditionally any college course that is less than 3 units, less than 3 semester units. That's typically a non-transferable course. So they can go ahead and report it here. If they took a LinkedIn course, if they took a Microsoft Office course, that's something that they could report here as well. We'll ask for the name of course, we'll ask them to describe the course, and we'll also ask them to tell us about any major themes or topics that they learned and what was covered in this particular course, and if they learned any particular skills. And then we'll ask the grade levels of when they took that particular course, and we'll ask as well the time spent in class, hours spent per week, weeks spent per year on average. And volunteer and community service, this is anything within the realm of students not getting paid. So if a student has dedicated their time to an experience and they have not gotten paid, but it wasn't any of the other categories that you see, so this could be a non-paid internship. This could also be where a student could put, maybe they were babysitting or taking care of their family members. They could input it here in volunteer community service. I will emphasize that we are not super particular on how a student categorizes their experience as long as they are using their best judgment with that particular experience. So even if a student said that they were babysitting, it could be extracurricular activity, it could go under volunteer and community service. We would be okay. We're not going to dock them on not categorizing a certain experience the right way. Now we're going to ask for this volunteer community service section. What was the name of the organization that they volunteered for, or that program, or that school group? We're going to ask them to describe what that organization is all about. So if they're donating some time to supporting the Boys and Girls Club, they got to provide a little bit of description of the organization. And then we're going to ask, what did they specifically do with their time? And again, this is where they need to frame their experiences effectively to showcase what they did with their time. We're going to ask for grades volunteered and then also time spent volunteering. And then last but not least, unlike volunteer community service, this is where students are getting paid for those experiences. So we're asking very similar questioning. What was the name of the organization, program, or group? Describe that organization, program, or group. And we're going to ask, what did they specifically do with their time in that job, in that paid experience, as well as the grades that they volunteered and time spent on average. So those are the 6 categories that are available. Now, activities and awards and the entire UC application process is an additive review process. I'm going to say that again. It is an additive review process, meaning when I'm reviewing an application, I am not docking students' points, or I'm not saying that this is a bad activity or award example that they shared. I am going to see their application and as well the activities and awards section in one of 3 ways. I'm going to see it as either a missed opportunity where they could have shared a little bit more, and I'm seeing that likely there's probably gaps of information in which they did not convey their experiences to the extent that was needed for me to understand their role, their impact, how they grew. So that was a missed opportunity. I'll see it as neutral, where they shared some detail, but it's not adding to any value to their overall application, or it was not as detailed as it could have been. So it's neutral. Or I'm going to see it as adding value. This is a awesome involvement activity. They've crafted their experiences and they conveyed it well in the application. And so let's have that conversation about missed opportunity neutral or adding value. Now, I kind of detailed again those definitions, and I want to be very clear that this is not a scale that we actually use in the application review, but it's more so of a mindset. And I'm hoping that you convey that information to your students is that if they decide not to share certain things in the application, it could be seen as a missed opportunity where they could have shared additional details that could really have added value to their overall application review. And so with missed opportunities, this example that I'm showcasing here is a student that has said math club was fun. They met monthly to solve problems together. Okay. What's the takeaway here? Right? I'm not seeing any type of initiative or leadership. The student is saying that math club was fun, and that's great. But tell me a little bit more, right? Was there any challenges that they had in math club? What is the takeaway of them actually telling me that math club was fun? I get no takeaways from this. I do see that they mentioned that they met monthly to solve problems together, but I'm just reading this as, okay, it was participation. They were there, they were present, right? There's no intentionality behind their involvement. Here's an example of neutral. So they participated in math club meetings to work on problem solving challenges with peers. It's better, right? It does show that they're involved. It does show that they were, working with other peers and had a sense of teamwork there. But I'm not seeing any type of impact or what was the growth over time with their involvement. And now we're getting a little bit better where it's starting to add value to their overall application and specifically this experience. They're saying, hey, I led small group discussions in math club to tackle complex problems. I'm growing. They said I strengthened persistence and collaboration through creative problem solving. All right. I'm seeing a lot of those keywords that we went over: initiative, teamwork, intellectual curiosity. It's giving me more. It's telling me about their development. It's showcasing that they led, i.e., they had leadership experiences. And so this is a much more robust way in which a student can convey their experience in this math club. Again, if this is a way in which it was authentic to them and a true experience that they did lead those small groups and they did tackle complex problems. Excuse me, my voice is going, I tell you guys. So, activities and awards example. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this out. And I'm again going to emphasize that this is not what we do on the back end when reviewing a student's application. We're going to rank this particular experience that a student has written. And mind you, this experience was a draft because it is 500 characters. It's 350 max characters. So let's talk through it. And you can use the chat to tell me, was this a missed opportunity experience or was this a great or added value experience? So math club was surprisingly fun. Once a month at lunch, 40 of us would pile into one classroom. We'd be chatting and eating and laughing obnoxiously until we were all handed a piece of paper and everyone went quiet. Every month, we were given a near impossible math problem. None of us were expected to solve it, and no one ever did, but we all tried. Because 5 minutes after the quiet spell, we were talking again, collaborating together to try to find an answer, and we loved the noise. Okay, the student participated in this particular experience math club in 10th grade. Hours spent per week, about a half an hour. Weeks spent per year in an academic year, or full year, 12 weeks. Okay. So not a lot of commitment. What say you? Was this a missed opportunity experience or was this great? And I'm seeing a lot of ones. I see twos. Okay. Other people are sharing with me specifically twos and ones. I see two. Shows collaboration, but not much else. Yeah. I'm seeing excuse me, I'm seeing a lot of fluff, if you will, in this description, and it's very similar to you all. Yeah, we would we would rank this as a 1. Again, I'm telling you, we don't do rankings for activities and awards, but for the purpose of this exercise, I would rank this as a 1. Now, let's remove all the fluff, right? Do I need to know that math club was surprisingly fun? Not really, but I am wanting to know a little bit more about that time commitment. So they're saying once a month at lunch, 40 of us were given a near impossible math problem. None of us were expected to solve it, and no one ever did, but we always tried, right? There's a lot of information that you can see that's lined out, right? There's looking at that second sentence, we'd be chatting and eating and laughing obnoxiously. Let's clear it out. Let's remove it. That last sentence there, and we love the noise. I'm not sure what they're trying to tell me with that. Let's remove it. So this is a little bit cleaner. But here's a way in which a student could craft their response using kind of what we learned, the action, the specifics, the outcomes, the growth. And this rating, I wouldn't say it's a 5 now, but I would definitely say it's better. It's a 4. It's good. It's starting to now add value to their application to this particular experience. So rephrase, this is join 40 peers in monthly math club challenges to tackle complex problems few students could solve. I led small group discussions to explore creative strategies, transforming frustration into curiosity. Okay. Strengthen skills and persistence, collaboration, and problem solving through consistent participation and leadership. All right. So we dwindled that down. It was 500 characters, is now 346. And this wasn't a huge commitment for the student. They didn't dedicate too much time. If they were involved in math club over time, 9th through 12th grade, I'd probably give this a 5. But contextually, it is a much stronger way to convey what they did with their time in this math club. Okay, I'm going to do one more example and then we're going to kind of wrap up for the session today. So this example here is a activity and they've categorized it under volunteering/community service. And this is their family responsibility. So they said they take care of 2 younger siblings, ages 5 and 7, after school every day while their mom works, picks up pick up from school, help with homework, and cook dinner each night. On weekends, I do chores and grocery shop for the family. 215 characters. They participated pretty much all of high school, 25 hours per week, weeks spent per year, every single week per year. So what would you rate this, as a missed opportunity or great on that scale? And I'm seeing some come in. I see 3s. I see 2, 3. Yeah, I'm taking a look. A couple of people have said 4 to me, 3. I'm seeing missing growth, 3, another one in the chat. And I'd say, this is pretty darn good. It is okay. It's in the in between. I would agree. 3, I would lean closer to 4. They had 250 characters that they utilized. I would have liked them to maximize that character count closer to the 350 characters. So I would say it's close to a 4, but there's ways in which we can fine tune this even more. And so here are some of those keywords, and everything that's in black is the same language that the student used, but we're now starting to add some of those keywords, right? The action, the specifics, what was the outcome? And again, outcome and growth or leadership is, in my opinion, interchangeable. So the student is now saying, I provided daily care, right? That's the there we go. That's my AI talking back to me. Provided daily care for 2 younger siblings. They said they manage weekend chores. We already knew that. And then they emphasized here that they grew and developed certain skills. So strengthening time management, they showcase responsibility. They're telling us explicitly that they had leadership through consistent caregiving, right? It is in our face when we read some of these characteristics and traits that were displayed. And now instead of the 200 and I believe it was 50, closer to 250 characters, they utilized 348. And so this would now be a definite 5. It adds value to their overall application. Now, wrapping up in summary, Context is really going to matter, right? We are taking a look at multiple different layers in the UC application, everything from the student's academic factors to their personal insight questions, to every single section of the application, including those extracurricular activities. But context is key. I really need to have an understanding of what was available to the student and what they took advantage of. And as students are inputting their activities and awards and they have those 350 characters to utilize, if they want to provide us with more contextual details about that experience, or maybe why or why not they were able to get involved or not involved in a particular experience, they can expand in the personal insight questions. But I'm always going to be evaluating a student's application in the context of what's actually available to them. So if they have any particular circumstances that might have affected their ability to get involved, they need to tell us. They can tell us either in that activities and awards section, in the personal insight questions, or additional comments so that we have a better understanding. I'm not going to penalize a student that has 5 high quality experiences over a student that had 20 mid to low quality experiences. Those 5 meaningful, impactful experiences, if they are well crafted, will tell a lot about a student's experiences, who they are as an individual, and it will tell me a little bit more later down the line as I continue to review their application, especially in those personal insight questions. Now, I know that you all have a lot of resources at your disposal, and I can't leave you with just information. Only I want to, be able to give back and share another resource that you can share out with your students and families as they continue to work on their application. Or if you're working with any 9th through 11th graders that are eventually going to be preparing to apply to UC, we've created an activities and awards resource sheet. So that QR code will take you to the resource sheet. And we also can send this out to you if you would prefer. But this is a fillable PDF where students can get a better understanding of ways in which they can use certain words through creating and crafting their experiences, more so using that dynamic language that we talked about, using those action words as well. And so this is a great way for students to start, especially even if they're, in 9th grade, but especially my juniors out there to start detailing what they've done in their high school years. So if you would like this PDF, go ahead and scan the QR code as a resource. And we will be adding this on our counselors resources page as well. And I likely can go ahead and share the link in just a second if it's easier for you. A few additional resources that are available. We do have, of course, our 2026 application tutorial video series. If you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to check it out. It is on our YouTube channel at UCSB for me. This is also where this session is going to be recorded, but on the counselor resources playlist. We do have breaking down the PIQs video series, and we also have a very brand new UC application Mythbusters. So I encourage you to share it out with your families. And then a few virtual events specifically for students. Every single week, we have either a campus admission presentation, a UC application overview. We have our very own activities and awards webinar that's available for students so that they can have a better understanding about crafting their experiences. And we do have those PIQ sessions as well. For counselor resources, if you haven't gotten a chance to already, we do have a lot of information on our UCSB counselor resources webpage. And if you scan that bottom QR code, it will take you to that webpage. It'll take you to where our YouTube channel is located. If you haven't already signed up for our counselor newsletter, I sure hope you have. You can sign up there. And then a couple months back, so it's relatively new, we created the PIQ conversational guides for counselors to share out with your students. Everything from questions like, should I use creative writing? The answer is always no. The answer is always no. But we did create a chart of sorts that helps you address ways in which you can help students figure out if this is the best case use when they're crafting their PIQ responses. Lastly, I will plug you in on 10:30. My wonderful director, Kuka Acosta, will be doing an out-of-state admissions webinar at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you haven't already, go ahead and register for that. You can do so on our counselor webpage as well. Now, with that being said, I did not get to as many questions as I would have liked to, but we can go ahead and get into them now.